Sometimes, sometimes what people think is, hey, you're conservative, so you go to church more. Well, there's a lot of liberals who go to church.
Yeah, and I applaud them for that. What do you think
any other place, synagogues, I don't want to limit it.
What do you think the driving force is behind this disparate mental health reporting?
Well, I think, one, you have to caution, like polls come out and it depends on who you polled and how many people were polled and so forth. But I do think that we do have, and I'm not talking about, the lawmakers' comments, Jasmine Crockett right now. I'm talking about, generally speaking, I think we have a mental health crisis for many reasons in this country. I think the amount of technology that young kids are on so early is part of the mental health crisis.
I agree with that.
The access to social media so early is part of the mental health crisis. So those who have grown up with, so to speak, a laptop or tablet in front of them at 3 years old and 4 years old, studies are now coming out, and many parents regret giving that to them that early. Now, you're not going to see that in generations prior because they didn't have tablets, right? But those who have, so now those who are raising kids now who are toddlers, hopefully can learn about what just happened within the past 10 or 15 years. And so I think you have a mental health crisis also because we went through COVID, and we know from studies that show that students who were in COVID and in learning environments, that they struggled with mental health, and they came out of COVID. I think that we don't even know how big a gap that has been. So I think that the mental health crisis, is for so many reasons. There was a serious lack of education around mental health for many years. Now people are more conscious and aware, and people are paying attention to kids more and what kids are saying. But for so many years, it was completely ignored or brushed under the rug, or there was a lot of shame around it. So I think the mental health crisis, we do ourselves a disservice by labeling it as liberal, conservative, independent. This is a problem within our society for many individuals across the board.
Yeah, I think that's generally true. It is good, though, to identify, I think, who is struggling the most so that you can tailor what you're doing to impact that in the correct way. But to your points about COVID and phones, I am curious, I agree with all of that. I'm wondering how that would potentially drive the difference between liberals and conservatives. Do you think maybe liberal parents were more willing to give their kids technology at a young age? Maybe conservative homes are more skeptical of technology, and then on the COVID issue, maybe there was more fear about COVID in liberal cohorts. One of the other important or interesting things in this poll was that Black liberals report better mental health than white liberals. And one of the things that I immediately thought of is that Black liberals tend to be more church-going than white liberals, so maybe that's part of what's driving that divide.
I don't know if it's church-going. I don't know exactly where that stat was coming from, so I'm going to pause on that. But I will say that there's a support network, and I also think that's a divide sometimes between the men and women. Women have a lot more support networks, not just from a religious standpoint, but also in, whether it's mom groups, whether it's single groups, whether it's, Black travel groups. We go traveling together. There's so many different support networks that women intentionally seek out, and I don't see that as much with men. Again, I kind of push back on whether it's conservative or liberal because I don't see it that way. I see it more as how socially do these groups and cultures traditionally get together. And look, I'm Ethiopian. There's a huge Ethiopian community, right? So if I want support in that way, I can go there. And I'm a woman. I may intentionally seek that out. Also have a mom group chat, So I'm all in these different groups, and I think that helps your mental health more than we give it credit for. What they say, one of the keys to longevity, right, is having support networks, and that's one of the reasons why women live a lot longer. We're physically and mentally healthier. So I think when we paint a broad stroke, we have to be careful because we just don't know. So many individuals. So let's say you say conservative households, maybe they're more likely to homeschool. Well, there can be pluses and minuses to that when it comes to mental health, right? Are you isolating kids more, or are you being intentional about putting them in networks after, so to speak, school is over? 3 o'clock to the house. Do we go and do activities? So I think it all depends so much on the neighborhood you're in, on your background, on your culture, more than your political status.
I think your point about men is well taken. They definitely are suffering a heavy mental health crisis right now, and the support group's point is important because over time we've seen that a lot of male-only spaces have been integrated. Boy Scouts is an example that comes to mind, right? Girls are now in Boy Scouts, and it's just Scouts now. And I think it is really important, especially for young men, to have male-only spaces where they do have that freedom to sort of express themselves in a really masculine way, in a way that's healthy. And I do fear about men losing that human connection aspect with members of their sex.
Especially with social media, like especially with the technology. So, I think it's something that, we'll continue to see more polls probably coming out on. All right. Next on Rising, is Charlie Kirk telling women to go to college for only one reason? We'll be right back.